Hi gentlemen, in this video we are going to be putting together everything we know about demand and supply, and when we do that we are going to be unpacking equilibrium, okay, or the equilibrium market price. So by the end of this video you should know how to define equilibrium market price, understand how to sketch it, and also understand that we can actually have changes to the equilibrium in the marketplace. So like always, let's start with a definition. Equilibrium. Okay, let's start with this. What is the equilibrium market price? Now, the equilibrium market price is, by textbook definition, a price from which there is no tendency to change. Let me stop there for a sec. A price from which there is no tendency to change. Therefore, it's a price that can stay stable or relatively stable because everyone in the marketplace is happy. It's only when someone in the marketplace is unsatisfied that prices need to change, okay? But at equilibrium, the price is stable. Now, it's a price just high enough for sellers, and it's just high enough for sellers to make the profit margins that they're happy with, okay? And it's a price just low enough for buyers. So it's a price that, as buyers, we still demand those commodities because we judge that they're good value for our money, okay, at the equilibrium market price. So therefore, if buyers and sellers are both satisfied, then what we can say is demand and supply are equal because buyers and sellers are happy, okay? So at which supply and demand are equal. So there is our textbook definition of equilibrium market price. Now, the best way to understand this concept of equilibrium is to sketch it. Okay, and let's do that here. So I'm going to try and make this as neat as possible, doing it freehand. Let's just sketch a demand and supply curve. So like always, we have price against quantity. Let's sketch a demand curve, which will always be downward sloping. Now this is demand because as price were to increase, quantity demanded decreases and vice versa. So there's our demand curve. We can also sketch in our supply curve. Okay, and our supply curve follows the law of supply. As the price increases, quantity supplied also increases because businesses will be making more profit. Equilibrium is when demand and supply meet. So equilibrium is this point here, which I'm just going to label EQ, our equilibrium market price. At that price there, buyers and sellers are happy to engage in transactions. Okay. Now let's use an example just to get our heads around this 100%. Let's say this is the market for cars. Okay. Now we can call this model a market because it represents buyers and sellers interacting. So we can call this a market from now on. Okay, the product is cars. Now, let's say that the price of cars is hypothetically $20,000. Okay, it's $20,000 for a new car. At that price, the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied is going to be 100,000 cars. 100,000 cars will be supplied to the marketplace and 100,000 cars will be purchased. Okay, that's what we can see here at equilibrium. Now, for whatever reason, prices can change, for a million different reasons. So let's say prices were to increase. Let's say the price of cars goes up to $50,000 per car. Maybe it's due to changes in import tariffs, and the cars that we import into Australia have an additional tariff placed on them, making them more expensive. Okay, let's pretend that's what's happening here. Using our knowledge of demand and supply, we can see that when price increases, it's going to result in movement in supply and demand. Now, let's think to ourselves, what's that movement called again? So when price goes up, let's start with the movement in demand. Okay, when price goes up, we see that quantity demanded has actually gone down. We can't afford to buy as many cars. So we call that a contraction in demand. That's what that movement is called. Let's have a look at supply. Okay, because the product can be sold for more now, okay, and perhaps the sellers are making more money, then we're going to see an expansion in supply. So perhaps my tariff example wasn't great, but if the price goes up, generally businesses will supply more of that product to the marketplace because the profit motive is there. But we now see that demand and supply no longer intersect like they used to do at equilibrium. Now demand is all the way down here and supply is all the way up there. Now let's visualize what that looks like. What that would actually look like is the car dealerships are absolutely stacked with cars that are going unsold. Quantity supplied is all the way up there. But there are very few people wandering around those dealerships or jumping online and actually willing to pay that amount for a new car. So what we see here is a textbook oversupply, otherwise known as a surplus. There is a surplus of cars going unsold. Now, we don't like this because this is an ineffective use of a firm's resources. Given our resources are innately relatively scarce, our resources are limited relative to our wants. This is an inefficient use of resources within the economy. And that's what happens when price goes up. Now, by the same logic, let's analyze what happens when the price goes down. Let's say the price of cars decrease, and now you can pick up a brand new car for $5,000, hypothetically. Well, what does that look like? Again, when price changes, we see movement in demand and supply. Movement, not shift, because the price has changed. So, let's have a look. Now, supply and demand don't intersect anymore. We are no longer at equilibrium, okay? So what do we see? Supply is all the way down here. Quantity supplied has dropped. Quantity demanded has increased. Let's look at the movements. Okay, let's have a look at the movement in supply. Quantity supplied has dropped. quantity supplied has contracted. Okay, what's going on here with demand? Quantity demanded has gone up. Okay, quantity demanded has expanded. Okay. Now that supply and demand no longer intersect, we are not at equilibrium, what do we see? Once again, let's visualize this for cars. You've got a whole bunch of people wandering around the dealerships looking for a new car because they're dirt cheap and we can afford them. But now the profit motive isn't there for the seller. Why would a car manufacturers, producers, these retailers, these car retailers, why would they bother producing and stocking cars when they make no money from the sale of cars? They're going to reallocate their resources to producing and selling trucks or something else that's similar. So the dealerships are empty, but a whole bunch of people are wandering around. What is that? Okay, well, it's a shortage. A shortage, which we sometimes call an undersupply. They're synonymous. Okay. So here we have two situations, surplus and shortages, that occur due to a change in the price. Okay. Both of these are situations, I guess, of maybe we can call them disequilibrium in the marketplace, rather than being at equilibrium. Okay, so that's how equilibrium works. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is this idea of changes in equilibrium. Okay, so hold on a sec, who's calling me? Hey B, can I call you back? I'm just filming a class. All right, bye. And let's move right along. So, changes in equilibrium, all right? This equilibrium here isn't set in stone. Sometimes the equilibrium point can in fact shift, okay? So let's have a look at what that looks like. I might do it over here. Can you guys see that? Yeah. Let's do a new set of axes. Okay, price, quantity. Alrighty. Let's chuck our demand and supply curves in. Demand and supply. And let's think of a new example. The market for milk. Okay. The market for milk. Alrighty. Now, here's the situation. The price of milk might be $2, and we might be looking at dollars per litre. Okay? Price of milk, $2 per litre. At that price, we are willing to demand, I don't know, I'm literally making these numbers up, 100,000 litres of milk. All right, I'm just making these numbers up to prove a point. So we're at equilibrium. Our sellers are making a healthy profit. Our buyers are perceiving milk to be value for money. Easy, okay, easy. But equilibrium can change. Here's a random scenario. Let's say that the government releases information from leading scientists that drinking excessive and copious amounts of milk prevents someone from contracting the coronavirus. Drink milk, you will be safe. Now, that's not a change in price. That's a change in a factor within the market. So, if drinking milk prevents the coronavirus, is that going to be a shift in demand or shift in supply? Well, it's going to be a shift in demand because now we will demand more milk. A positive shift in demand is a shift to the right. There is our increase in demand. Any of this isn't making sense, please go back to the demand video where we looked at shifts. Okay, so please have a look at that. This isn't making sense. Now, as a result, you see here that we have a new equilibrium. Okay, that now demand and supply intersect at this point. Has the price of milk gone up? Yes, it has. It might go up to $4 a litre due to the increase in demand. Okay, and now we demand more milk. Maybe now we demand 200,000 litres. These numbers are arbitrary. I'm making them up to prove a point. Okay, this point here is our new equilibrium. Okay, so I can say this was EQ1, and this is the new equilibrium at EQ2. Okay. Now, over time, like this becomes our new equilibrium, that suppliers of milk are now thinking, all right, there's more demand for our product. Let's start increasing our supply of milk to the Australian marketplace because people are going to want it and they're going to be willing to spend. So the milk producers will reallocate their resources maybe away from other dairy products, and they'll put all their resources just into the production of milk. Okay, retailers might be stocking their shelves with all different types of dairy products, and they'll start stocking fewer, creams and butters or whatever, and they'll stock more milk brands. Okay, because that's what's in demand. That is the new equilibrium. Okay, now over time, we're talking now in the long term, when the production of milk catches up with the demand, that might bring the price down to the original equilibrium over time. But that's not gonna happen overnight. You need to increase your production capabilities. So you've got to buy new machinery, you've got to update facilities, you've got to hire more staff. Eventually, when supply does catch up, we might see movement back to the original equilibrium point, the old equilibrium market price. But for the moment, the new equilibrium is now up here. Okay, so what am I trying to show you here? I'm trying to show you that we can have changes in the equilibrium situation. Okay, that's what I'm trying to show you here. Equilibrium can change. Okay, so gentlemen, that is equilibrium in a nutshell. Okay, like always, what I would expect is that you refer to the relevant pages of the textbook, you have a look at the slides that we've made available to you. If you have any questions about anything that we've covered in any of these videos, please drop me a chat via our Microsoft Teams and we can work through those questions. Okay, gentlemen, best of luck.